Hello, our topic for today is vibrational astrology and the physics of Nassim Haramein. Nassim Haramein is creating a revolution in physics. He's building new ideas that transform our understanding of how the universe works. Vibrational astrology is a vibrant new area in astrology. These two movements, the one movement in physics, this new physics of Nassim Haramein, and this movement in astrology that we call vibrational astrology, are very, very similar. They use the same kind of model for understanding life. They have the same assumptions. They use similar, very, very similar methods. They have the same kind of vision of where we're headed and how things work. They're both emphasizing a connected universe. Now, one way in which this new physics and vibrational astrology are different is that this physics is a step ahead of the astrology, you could say. It has more data, more solid observations. It's made more predictions. So, for example, Nassim Haramein has predicted the size of the proton, for example. Physicists know the size of the proton, but only within certain limits. He came up with a formula that predicted its size slightly different from the current estimates, and then new observations were made that matched his prediction of the size. So this is what hard science is about, is being able to predict how things work, synthesize information, and be able to make new discoveries based on your understanding. Well, and of course, physics is a rock-solid field of study. Astrology is not. Astrology is more in an early stage of discovery. It's been around for thousands of years, but it has not become clearly defined as to what it is. It's not even clear that it could operate as a science. Many astrologers think that it cannot. But what's happening in vibrational astrology is that it uses the same kind of scientific methods that are used in physics, and it is developing validation and moving forward. And you might say is slowly catching up to where physics is. But even though vibrational astrology does not have as much solid data as Nassim has developed in physics, it is developing new insights that are getting validation, and vibrational astrology is like a new frontier of this new physics. And I'm going to go through several ways in which vibrational astrology and this new physics are the same. But one of the things I want to give you a preview about, because I'm emphasizing so much the science, the hard science, the physics, is the mystical side of this. That both the new physics and the vibrational astrology have the same mystical quality as well. So we'll get to that. So if you're getting put off by, science, numbers, rationalism, let me out of here, the new physics is not restricted to a narrow linear perspective. That's one of the breakthrough concepts behind it. Okay, let's see some of the ways that the new physics of Nassim Haramein and vibrational astrology are the same. Number one, both of them emphasize the fundamental importance of space. So one of the things that Nassim emphasizes is that space defines matter. In normal thinking, we don't think about space. We take it for granted. Things exist in space. But in physics, there's been a growing movement, and it reaches kind of a crescendo, a peak, you might say, in the work of Nassim Haramein, where space is the underlying thing that's making everything happen. So, as Nassim says, there's like a wiggle in space that creates the subatomic particles, which are not even completely solid themselves. And these subatomic particles are extremely far apart. So the distance between one proton and the next proton is enormous. So the molecules that make up anything are mostly space. And then you take planets And the distance between Earth and Mercury or Earth and Venus is huge. You know, you've probably seen the videos and explanations about if you put the Earth on a football field, how big is it next to Mercury? And they're like little fleas or little marbles, hugely far apart. And then solar systems are very far apart. The stars are very far apart from each other. And then the galaxies are hugely far apart. So at every level, it's mostly space. And space is full of energy. It's not this empty, blank thing. And out of the vacuum, we think of space as a vacuum, as if there's nothing there. But it's actually alive with huge amounts of energy. And out of that vacuum, matter can be created. Some of the recent experiments in the sciences show this. So this idea that space is fundamental is important. And it's not just a philosophical idea. It has very practical applications and consequences of thinking this way. And I'll explain a few of them as we go along here. And here's one of them, is that space is the fundamental thing in reality, and space has geometric structures. So Nassim talks about the tetrahedron and how tetrahedrons combine together into complex collectives, you might say, of tetrahedrons. And these tetrahedron structures, the basic distance, the Planck length, which is this extremely minute distance, this essential fundamental piece, like a little dot of reality, they form together in these tetrahedrons. And it's these geometric forms that enable things like gravity and other basic functions to happen. They're produced out of these fundamental structures. So the way we look at a zodiac in vibrational astrology is that it is a structure in space. The houses are structures in space. And I believe that over time, we're going to find out that in addition to the tetrahedrons and other structures in space, the zodiac is another structure in space. Keep in mind that we are at the early stages, very early stages of understanding space and the structures in space. And the zodiacs, plural, there's more than one zodiac. There's things we call the draconic zodiac. It's a complex system of structures in space. Same thing with houses, that these actually exist. And we have a good sense of how they are created, which I will talk about soon. But they are structures in space that are created. They are not rays coming from the stars. The placement of the stars and the constellations have actually nothing to do with the zodiac and the houses. They are created out of the fundamental properties of the universe. So in vibrational astrology, we are saying exactly the same thing that Nassim Haramein is saying. Now, these ideas developed parallel, mostly independently. And then as I found out about Nassim Haramein and started studying what he's doing, it's one of these, oh my God, moments. Everything that I'm saying, he is saying, but he has a more solid foundation in physics for the same things. So both of us independently coming up with this idea that space is fundamental, space underlies reality, and there's a sacred geometry, this geometry behind the hidden world that is, you might say, controlling, that is forming the foundation for what we experience. And I believe that in time, structures like the zodiac and the houses will be validated. So we can look at vibrational astrology as a new frontier of Nassim Haramein's work. It's a new frontier. We're building the models. We're gaining the evidence to support that these structures in space actually exist. Okay, another way in which VA, vibrational astrology, and the new physics of Nassim Haramein are very similar is the emphasis on spin. When I started reading Nassim's works and watching his videos and started taking his lessons and what he calls his delegate program, I was amazed at the emphasis that he put on spin, because I had already come to this idea that spin must be at the very heart of reality. It must be, because it explains so much of astrology. And one of Nassim's phrases is that his ideas are Einstein with a twist. He's taken the ideas of Einstein and added to the formula parameters, additional variables based on a torque, or you could call a twist or an angular momentum. You can use different words for it, but it's spin, a kind of a spin, something that has a quality of what we could call angular momentum. It's not always a physical spin, but it's some kind of a spin of an angular momentum at every level of reality. So in VA, which again we can look at as a kind of new frontier of physics, is that spin becomes fundamental. In fact, the way we understand why there's a zodiac is the zodiac is created from spin. So this becomes a new innovative idea that we need to validate with more and more research, and we are conducting the research and validating it, that there is a structure called the zodiac. Where does it come from? The most obvious thing would be that it's generated by spin. And furthermore, from spin, the Earth is spinning on its axis. The Earth is revolving around the Sun. That's a form of spin. The Sun is going around the galactic center. That's a form of spin. Everything is spinning. And another cutting-edge idea is that spin is generating structures through number sequences, specifically Fibonacci numbers put into a modulus function. They're called Paisano periods. And prime numbers create 12 equal spaces of 30 degrees, exactly what the ancients had been talking about. And I've made about a dozen videos, tutorial videos here on YouTube, that explain exactly the technical details of how Paisano periods create a zodiac. So you see that this new physics of Nassim and these new ideas in vibrational astrology are exactly the same model, the same thinking. Structures in space, spin as the fundamental thing, and we're adding some new ideas that there's number sequences being thrown out through the spin, Paisano periods, prime number sequences, and they create these structures in space. What's amazing is that when you look at the Paisano periods, they form 12 equal divisions of 30 degrees. I have entire videos about this. So this is another way that we see that vibrational astrology and the new physics are using the same language, the same concepts to develop our understanding of how things work. The other thing that vibrational astrology and this new physics of Nassim have in common is that life is fractal. So these geometric patterns are repeating from the microscopic to the visible to the macroscopic level. Everything is interrelated. The number of Planck, I don't even know what to call them, these fundamental things in Nassim's understanding that have the size of the Planck length that are packed into a proton, that number is replicated in the universe. So things are synchronized and connected in a fractal way. And this is also not so very far from standard confirmed ideas in physics. We know that there's quantum entanglement. We know that particles interact instantaneously faster than the speed of light. Bell's theorem has been around a long time and states that things are related to each other instantaneously. So this instantaneous connection, how does it happen? Why is it there? At least part of the reason is the fractal nature, that things are connected by resonance and fractal connections. They're repeating microcosms within macrocosms within larger macrocosms. And you see this idea in astrology in many ways, not just vibrational astrology, but astrology in general, where we have this idea of secondary progressions. If you're an astrologer, you're familiar with it. And we say a day equals a year. And when we say a day equals a year, we're saying that one form of spin, the Earth spinning on its axis, is synchronized. It's a lower fractal level of the Earth going around the Sun. So we're saying that spin is fractal. Exactly what Nassim is discovering, that things exist in geometric patterns built from spin and repeat at these levels, and you could say are synchronized or communicating with each other. Okay, so, and also in vibrational astrology, we look at these intricate planetary patterns, and the idea is that they are repeated again within us. It's a fractal relationship. So, how does astrology work? It works through fractal relationships and resonance. That's the key. Some people think, is it causal? Are there rays? Is it archetypal? What's going on? It's vibrational resonance is the key. And the archetypal images evolve and develop out of these frequencies and vibrations. I have made hundreds of videos, dozens of videos, and these things that go into more detail. In this video, I'm just focusing on the ways in which this new physics and VA are on the same exact path. Okay. Number 5. Now, this is a language that I use, and I think that the Nassim and other experts in his studies in physics will agree with this terminology. That's reasonable. That there are crystalline structures in space, like the tetrahedron forms, and in astrology we'll add in zodiacs and houses and the vibrational connections between angular distances between planets resonating within us. So there are crystalline structures and there are fluid dynamics. And by fluid dynamics, I basically mean the waves, all of these waves. So in space we know there are light waves, sound waves. Those light waves from the sun and from the stars traveling through all that space, they can travel through what we call vacuums. They travel. How does that happen? Because space is not nothing. It's actually something. So light waves, sound waves are different from light waves, and they have other dependencies. But these are all kinds of waves. All of the electromagnetic spectrum waves, infrared, ultraviolet, also gravity waves. Nassim likes to give this example of right now, if you're in a city or a village, you probably have dozens of radio stations. So if you had a radio and you tuned your radio to a certain frequency, you can hear the music or the announcements or the news or whatever's on that radio station. So even these man-made frequencies of radio stations, there could be dozens or hundreds of them all flowing through your room right now, and all you need to do is tune a crystal to the right frequency and it picks it up. So we know that there are vibrations in complex patterns, huge numbers of different kinds of waves traveling through us. Those are the fluid dynamics. So in vibrational astrology, we do not have just a few aspects, like what we call the Ptolemaic aspects, conjunction, opposition, square, trine, sextile. We analyze the complex fluid dynamics, these intricate vibrational patterns, and they're actually very simple rules to unravel them. One of the reasons why people have not studied them is they thought, oh, it's too complex. We can't get into all that. I'm having enough trouble with just, a few aspects. But what we have found in vibrational astrology is we found a doorway into this to unravel how those vibrations work and how they affect people's behavior. So again, you see how similar VA is to this new physics. Both of us analyzing structures in space, different kinds of structures, but there's no doubt a complex array of structures in space. And so different structures are being found by different people, and complex vibrations. All physics is based on complex vibrations, all the different light waves and sound waves and radio waves, etc. And the vibrational astrology is consistent with this. We live in a vibrational universe. So a lot of similarities. So this is just continuing what I said on the previous slide, same point number 5. Resonance is fundamental. Nassim's organization is called the Resonance Academy. And in vibrational astrology, we're studying resonance, the crystalline structures and the resonance and the vibrational effects. And this, point number 6, is a huge way that vibrational astrology and physics in general, not just Nassim's physics, but all of physics are the same, is that vibrational astrology is very empirical. So usually in astrology, we develop our ideas by reading the literature, studying from teachers, and applying them in our personal experience. And if they seem to work for us and for our friends and family, then it appears that it works, and we build our knowledge that way. In VA, we also do all of those things, but we also, in addition to our personal experience, our clients, friends, family, famous people, we analyze what is in a database of tens of thousands of charts. And we do analysis of it, including a numerical analysis, where we've analyzed things like gold prices, what happens when people get in accidents. We've analyzed baseball batting performance, and we calculate statistical results like Pearson correlation coefficient values, what the level of statistical significance is. We have huge databases where we analyze things using different kinds of tools. We also use a lot of qualitative research methods to build the models. But these qualitative research methods are much more rigorous, much more data-driven than the usual way that astrology is done. So this is another way that VA and physics in general are the same, much more empirical. So for example, just take a simple example of zodiac signs. We run through the database with particular research designs. I won't get into the details of that here. And if we study Aries and we cannot validate the meaning of Aries based on our research, then we cannot use that idea of Aries. And we find something more consistent in the actual data. And it's data-driven. Doesn't matter what my opinion is or your opinion. Can you make an argument based on this actual data? And you have to go back to the data. And then when we can, we apply those ideas to our friends, family, and clients, and you get much greater consistency. So your subjective impressions and personal experiences become much more refined by using information that's more data-driven, more empirical. And when people hear about being empirical, number-based, they sometimes feel that this is a different path. This might be good for certain people, but it's working against the grain of their own particular approach to astrology. But in this new physics and in VA, we don't feel that way. We don't feel that this numerical analysis, this looking at detail, this very grounded approach is really different from a mystical approach, or that it works against it. And that might sound strange to people because we're used to talking about the right brain, the left brain, the nerd, the mystic, and we've separated those out. We've separated them as if they're two different separate roads. But in the view of vibrational astrology and in the view of this new physics of Nassim, they are not separate roads. They're two halves. It's like two sides of a coin that actually need each other. So as much as we might think that nerdy analysis is not connected to the spiritual, inspirational. It is the flip side of it. So, and this is not just a vague philosophical thing. It has practical applications. So, for example, one of the ideas in chaos theory and fractal theory is that there is infinity within enclosed spaces. So when you take a circle and you put a triangle within it and a triangle within that, it goes to infinity. And this is one of the basic mathematical concepts that's fundamental to fractal theory, is there are infinities within boundaries. So boundaries, the finite, the specific, the tangible, and the infinite are interwoven. This is part of fractal theory and fractal mathematics. It's fundamental to fractal mathematics. It's also fundamental to other parts of math, but it's gone largely unrecognized. So that when you do calculus, you're using a formula of what happens as something approaches zero, as a limit approaches zero. That relationship transforms into a new relationship. So an x squared turns into a 2x. So at infinity, there's a transformation. So we're seeing how finite processes change as they approach infinity. So the idea of the infinite, the wondrous, instantaneous connection, everything is simultaneously connected to everything. These are all fundamental principles of vibrational astrology and the new physics. So one of the ways to improve your studies is to fine-tune your antenna. Your brain, your whole body is an antenna, is receptors. Your brain doesn't create thought, it receives thought. So by going into meditation, by going into deep states of peace and feelings of oneness with all, it enhances your ability to think clearly, to analyze, and to come up with practical answers. They are actually synergistic. So we're not seeing the mystical and the material as two unrelated worlds. We're seeing that they need each other. They're like the yin and the yang. They need each other. They enhance each other, because infinity is not only something that extends, like counting indefinitely. Infinity also exists within boundaried states. There's infinity in every cell. There's infinity within you. And going within brings you to that infinity and that resonance, so that you can feel the connectedness and the truth of what's without with what is within. This is why when you go to research institutes, great universities, they're often on beautiful campuses. You get these picturesque images of the university campus with the beautiful lawns and everything. This brings you into a sensitive awareness and attunement, with the beautiful trees and so on, that aligns you to think deeply, to connect deeply, and to find answers. Okay. So there are other similarities, just interesting, you might say coincidences, not as fundamental, but just an interesting thing is that Nassim is emphasizing that ancient civilizations were more sophisticated in mathematics and science than we think. And one of the ways he discovered this is by looking at pyramids, other artifacts from ancient times, and noticing that these geometric patterns that are at the heart of nature and have only been discovered in recent years are in these ancient pyramids, other buildings, artifacts. How the heck did they get there? What's going on? So somehow ancient people knew about things. They knew about generating energy in different ways. It's very peculiar. It seems that those sources, that some ancient knowledge there got lost along the way somehow. And an interesting thing that happened parallel, in vibrational astrology, is when I discovered that an Arabic part is an extraordinarily powerful resonance point. So an Arabic part is a formula used in astrology way, way, way back to the early Hellenistic, probably before then. And it's this little formula that there's no reason for using it that's based on vibration or frequency. But if you analyze it mathematically, it is an incredibly powerful resonating point. Is that a coincidence that this ancient formula, which is not explained in any of the material that's been handed down so far, as a resonating point, is about the most powerful resonating point that you can find in the entire circle, in the great circle that we call the Zodiac? It's too much of a coincidence that they put so much emphasis on the most powerful resonating point. And it took us so long to figure that out. Nassim often talks about how he spent more than 30 years, and he spent a lot of those years in his van trying to figure this stuff out, without a lot of money and just living as simply as he could, so he could have the time to study this, and then coming up with something very simple in the end. And I have the same experience where I find out, oh my gosh, the Arabic part is nothing but a powerful, resonating point. Like the part of fortune makes the sun, moon, and ascendant ring throughout your chart. And I explain that in other videos. So another similarity is, it's clear to me, it's clear to Nassim, for different reasons, that the ancients knew a lot more than we think they knew. That somehow from my viewpoint, they knew about these resonating points. It's very obvious, as you dig into these things. Okay, so this is just one example, by the way, the Arabic parts, of coincidences that indicate that much of the very ancient astrology was based on a mathematics, geometry, and resonance much more sophisticated than the Ptolemaic aspects. So again, this is a radical idea in vibrational astrology that most astrologers up until now haven't been thinking that way, but this is what we're seeing from the point of view of vibrational astrology. And similarly, Nassim has found the same thing in relationship to physics, that there was some knowledge of ideas in the most cutting-edge physics that must have been known in ancient times. How they got that knowledge, what went on, I don't know. I don't speculate about that very much. But from an astrological viewpoint, they had it. They were very sophisticated. It's very clear. Arabic parts and many other things indicate that. So there are other just coincidental things about how Nassim developed his insights and how I developed ideas in vibrational astrology. I was living out in a cabin in the woods without air conditioning and just a wood stove, and he was living in his van. And it's just, you see these parallel things happen in history all the time, and little things like the importance of meditation and other things. But also, I don't want to, inflate my importance or even the importance of Nassim as an individual. That would be, hypocritical in the sense that what both of us are emphasizing is our oneness, our connectedness, and that we all stand on the shoulders of giants, and different people contribute in different ways to this development. And that will be my last point of this video, the similarities between Nassim's new physics and vibrational astrology, is the importance of teamwork, the importance of having a group of people, because progress in science, in any field of inquiry, requires a team. Each person brings in different things. So it's not like one person just can magically come up with everything. It requires so much dedication and time, to unlock the secrets of Mother Nature. And one of the things that we're doing to move vibrational astrology forward is to build community. Same thing Nassim is doing. We must build community. By myself or by a small group of people, half a dozen, we're really not going to go anywhere. It requires a team. It requires a network, because Mother Nature is complex, and each person brings something different into it. And one of the ways that we're building community and building the movement in vibrational astrology is the conference, the annual conference. So here at astrosoftware.com, there's a menu bar at the top. So if you go to www.astrosoftware.com, you go to conference, click on the Vibrational Astrology Conference link, and it will tell you about the next conference. If you're watching this video 3 or 4 years from now, it'll have the next year up here. But it's an annual conference. Currently it's being held in North Florida, in Gainesville, Florida, at the end of March. In the year 2020, it's March 27 to 29. Perhaps that'll change a little bit over time. Probably not. We're figuring that's what we'll be doing for quite a while. But having the conference where people meet live, it's not just all virtual, very important for building community, building projects, building networking, building the excitement, building the real connections, and building those strong friendships of people who have the same vision and the same goals. And of course, we have online classes. There are classes being taught by people who are fully trained in vibrational astrology. Linda Berry, Clarissa Dolphin, other people are going to be starting to teach vibrational astrology. There are all the videos I made. So we're doing our best to build community. It's, I believe, the most important thing to move vibrational astrology forward, because that's how things happen. We wouldn't have modern sciences or modern arts or modern music if 1 or 2 people were by themselves, not interacting, learning from each other, getting inspired, and all of the vast information and resources that can be available when people work together. So that's it for this video, my friends. I just wanted to share with you that vibrational astrology has strong parallels in the physics of Nassim Haramein. This often happens in history where things happen at the same time. I think they're all part of a very important movement that brings the rational and the technical and the scientific and the mystical all into one thing. It's very, very exciting. It inspires us to feel our oneness and connectedness with all, and it gives the scientific foundation for it, and it opens the door to huge new discoveries that can make life much easier. So this, I think, is vitally important to help move all of humanity and our entire planet forward. Thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.